So the very last thing that I am going to talk to you about is all the optional items that you can grab while as a beginner crochet will need later on. So I have here is a clip. You can grab these for any types of crochet projects that you might need for clipping your projects. Another one is I have this little bag of buttons, and these ones of all different sizes, as you can see here. So this one I would definitely go out and grab because you are going to be using buttons in any type of crochet garment that you're going to want to be using, such as bracelets to cardigans to sweaters. You can also use them as decoration in your projects as well. Another thing later on down the road you may want to try and pick up are these. I call them squishies, and you can put these on your crochet hooks, and these actually alleviate any type of pain as you are crocheting. So you feel the squishies and it's easier for you to crochet and not have any pain in your wrist. And another one I would also pick up is a row counter. So when you turn it on, you have a 0, and you just click the middle button and it'll just count your rows, so you always know what row you're on. Another thing is too, you can also reset it back to 0, so if you're starting a new project, that always helps. Another optional thing that you're want to need is thread, and this is great for sewing a lot of your projects together. This is a nice thick thread. It's actually called Buttons and Carpet. As you can see, it is a poly/cotton, and it's by Sewology. And this one is a good thread to use. Another one I also would say is pick up a little needle ball and grab yourself a whole bunch of little different needles. These are great for pinning your garments together, such as sweaters to cardigans to pretty much anything that you need to be pinning together, and you will sew. Your crochet hooks can range from small to larger hooks like these ones, and I would suggest getting larger hooks and lace hooks. Normally the packs will come between 6.5 to about 4.5. Normally you have to buy another pack that has the 3 to 2s. Now I put every single crochet hook back, and I just left out the 5mm, which is this dark blue one, and the 5.5mm, which is this orange one. And I'm just letting you know that each hook is for sizing. So the 5.5 to 5.0mm hooks are going to be your middle hooks for sizing, whereas these ones are going to be for your larger hooks. The 6.5, you're going to have a larger sizing. As you go down, you're going to have smaller sizing. So what I would suggest doing is figuring out which hook you're going to like, which fits comfortably in your hands for crocheting. So whether it be like this, or you hold it with your first finger and your thumb, and then the rest of your fingers wrap around your hook like this, if this is how you're going to crochet, or if, like a pencil. So I would find the one that fits the best and most comfortable. If you like smaller hooks, stick with the smaller ones. If you like medium size, go with medium. Larger hooks. So with the 5.5mm hook, I actually started using this one. This one was the most comfortable. This one does not have a name on the back. I got these from Amazon with this great little storing bag in it. So you can store all your crochet hooks and find them nice and easy. The next thing that we're going to talk about that's very important for our tools is going to be our yarn. And I have two different pieces right here. I have one by Premier Serenity, and it is a chunky. And this is a good yarn for starting out, so that way you can get a feel for your yarn. As you can see, it's pretty chunky. So when you're choosing yarns, there are many different companies. You have the company by Premier, which is this one. You can buy at Walmart. The next one I have over here is called Red Heart Super Saver Ombre. And this one is going to be Baja Blue. As you can see, it's a multicolors of light blue to dark blue. This is another yarn company you can choose from. Next one I have is called Lion Brand Yarn. And this one is also a good one. It's called Homespun. And the color looks like Sunshine State. Now this is an older type of Lion brand that I've had for many years. As you can see, it was on clearance. So this one is also another bulkier type of yarn. And how you can tell is when you're looking on your label, you want to look for this little ball of yarn that says 5 and bulky. So that tells you pretty much how thick this yarn is going to be. It also tells you what type of hook you want to use for this. So it looks like a 6.5 millimeter or a K10. For this one, it's going to take 10 single crochets and 10 rows to get either 4 by 4 inches, so it'll be 4 wide by 4 tall, or 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters. 10 centimeters wide, 10 centimeters in length. And that gives you quite an idea of what you'll be looking for with this type of yarn. You're also going to be looking at other things such as 98% acrylic, 2% polyester. So that's the type of yarn. Down here you'll see that it's 6 ounces, 170 grams, 185 yards, and 169 millimeters. A lot of people like to tell you how many yards you will be looking for each type of yarn, so that way you can figure out how many skeins or balls you will need for each project. Down here in the label it'll tell you washing instructions. So you can wash and dry it. You cannot iron it. You can't use chemicals with it. It also tells you washable and dryable. On the inside of the label it will talk about washing and drying as well, and it will give you this neat little pattern on the very front. And that is with a lot of different yarn skeins that you will get. Same with the Premier one. You'll get this really neat blanket. So this will have a pattern of that blanket. Same thing here. This is also a 5 bulky, and this one is asking for, looks like now this one is asking for an 8 millimeter crochet hook. Now these are just suggestions. You do not have to take the suggestions and use an 8 millimeter hook. You can use a 6.5. You can use a 5.5. I would suggest using bigger yarn, bigger crochet hooks with this thicker yarn. It will be a lot easier on your wrists and your arms, and you won't have as difficult time with it. As for this one, this is the Red Heart Super Saver Ombre. This one is telling you, as you can see, these are your knitting needles, 5 millimeters. Whereas this one is going to be a 4 medium. And so this one is telling you you can use a 5.5 millimeter hook. So this one is a good yarn for using 5 or smaller. 5.5 or smaller. You can also use a 6 to a 6.5. Do not use an 8. It would be a little difficult to try and use this yarn with. The type of yarn that you can also be looking at is a cake. So this is what a cake looks like. It's a lot different than the balls. It's circular and round. This one is called Yarnspirations Karen Big Cakes. You can also get these in smaller cakes as well. This one does not have any wool, so it says no wool in it whatsoever. This one is called, if you are wondering, this one says that it has 3 balls in one in this Karen cake. You can make this really neat scarf with it. Looks like it is a medium pattern, and you're going to need a 6 millimeter hook. This one is called, I know, Tiramisu. So it's really pretty. 300 grams, 10 ounces. So this is a very big yarn cake, and these are the different types of yarns that you will be finding all over the place at different places. The other thing I'd like to mention too, the reason why this one says no wool on it, wool shrinks. So if you're going to make a project with wool, be very mindful of what acrylic, wool, all sorts of different stuff mean. Acrylic means that this one is not going to shrink. It is machine washable and dryable. Please make sure that you are paying attention to stuff like this. A lot of times with wool, you are going to want to block your projects. Whereas acrylic, you can put them in the washing machine and you can dry them. Another thing I would like to point out, if you are going to wash these items, so if you make a project with this and you wash it by itself. Do not wash it with clothing. You will get these little balls, fuzz balls all over your project, and it becomes very irritating to take every single one of them off. The other thing that I suggest is wash it, hang it up to dry. Dryers sometimes can tear your projects apart and stretch them out, and then your project doesn't look as beautiful as it did when you first made it. These are suggestions that I am giving you, mistakes that I have found. Next thing that we're going to talk about is needles. Needles are very important for sewing in strings. It also is very important for also sewing your project as well. So if you're making a cardigan and you want to sew up the sides, you're going to need a needle. So I have this one right here with a large eye hole. That way it's easier for the yarn to go through the eye hole and for you to sew in your strings. This one is blunt, so it doesn't poke you. I have a smaller one as well, and this one is for sewing in strings as well, if you can get it in there, if you have smaller yarn, or you can use thread. Thread is also an option when sewing your projects together. I use a thicker thread so it holds together. Another thing that you're also going to need that's very important is scissors. Make sure your scissors are sharp. And another thing is too, with your scissors and your yarn needles, you're going to want to put them away once you are done sewing in your strings or cutting your strings. Keep your fingers away from your sharp scissors so you don't cut yourself. That's always been a problem of mine. So when you're trying to cut something, just keep your fingers away, hold your string, and just go. And then that way you don't cut yourself. So those are two good tools. You can also buy a pack of these at Walmart as well, or any store. Small needles or larger eye hole needles. I would go for the larger eye hole needles, so that way it's easier to pull it right through like this. And the bigger the eye hole, the easier it is for you to thread your yarn through, just like that. The last two items I'm going to talk about are stitch markers. Now I do still have this thread. Now if you don't have any stitch markers, thread is always really good for a stitch marker. You can just put it right into your stitches with your crochet hook and it becomes a neat little stitch marker. You can also buy these. These look like safety pins, or if you actually have safety pins, you can use those as well. Those make great stitch markers. I've also bought these ones. They slip right on. Another thing too is hairpins. I bought a pack of these, and these were my first ones that I used, and then I went to yarn, and then of course I bought these. The next and last thing that I used is tape measure. Tape measure is great for measuring anything in your project, whether it be cardigans, to hats, to your body, to somebody else's body. If you're not very good at wanting to use inches, don't use the inches, use centimeters. I was using centimeters for a very long time. I still do. I feel it's a lot easier to try and figure out the size of something. Then I write down my measurements and I try to get it close to, let's say it was 16 centimeters. I try to get my stitches close to that size if that's what I'm looking for. The very last thing that I am going to talk to you about is all the optional items that you can grab while as a beginner crochet will need later on. So I have here is a clip. You can grab these for any types of crochet projects that you might need for clipping your projects. Another one is I have this little bag of buttons, and these ones of all different sizes, as you can see here. So this one I would definitely go out and grab because you are going to be using buttons in any type of crochet garment that you're going to want to be using, such as bracelets to cardigans to sweaters. You can also use them as decoration in your projects as well. Another thing later on down the road you may want to try and pick up are these. I call them squishies, and you can put these on your crochet hooks, and these actually alleviate any type of pain as you are crocheting. So you feel the squishies and it's easier for you to crochet and not have any pain in your wrist. And another one I would also pick up is a row counter. So when you turn it on, you have a 0, and you just click the middle button and it'll just count your rows. So you always know what row you're on. Another thing is too, you can also reset it back to 0. So if you're starting a new project, that way that always helps you to count your rows. I use this in single crochet. That helps me to count my rows. Another optional thing that you want to need is thread, and this is great for sewing a lot of your projects together. This is a nice thick thread. It's actually called Buttons and Carpet. As you can see, it is a poly/cotton, and it's by Sewology. And this one is a good thread to use. Another one I also would say is pick up a little needle ball and grab yourself a whole bunch of little different needles. These are great for pinning your garments together, such as sweaters to cardigans to pretty much anything that you need to be pinning together and you will sew later. I like those as well. And then another thing I would suggest is containers, storage. So you want to always store your items. As you can see here, I have this Altoids box where I store some buttons and needles. I have many different of these boxes. This one just has a bunch of different items in it. As you can see, it says buttons and extras. Another storage container you can pick up as well is this cute little pink box that I have here. You can also store your crochet hooks in this. Another thing you can also do is I have picked up from the dollar store container as well. So this one is great. As you can see, I have my hair ties on my knitting needles so I can find my stuff. And this is where I store all my little scissors and my little hook for when I was doing some needlework. And then I also have some crochet hooks in here as well. So these baskets are great. You can find these at the dollar store. Another thing too for storage is you can also make yourself a crochet bag like I have right here on the table. And this was one of my first projects that I made when needing to store my crochet hooks. So as we open it up, at the very top right here, you're going to see all of my stitch markers. And then we're going to fold it over. And there's all my crochet hooks. And this little flap right here is where I have all of my needles. And then down here was supposed to be my tape measure. And then I also have a pair of scissors. So this is another great storage container that you can use for storing a lot of your projects. Now the last thing that I'm going to suggest is this is a mesh bag with soap in it. And the reason why I am suggesting this is, one, because you're going to get creepy crawlers in your yarn, such as this one right here. And the reason why is because inside of here it's nice and dark and they like to crawl in there and stay warm. So when you have these soapy bags and you put them with your yarn, you're not going to have those creepy crawlers in your yarn. And I'm talking creepy crawlers such as spiders to ants, silverfish to beetles, anything that is a creepy crawler that's really kind of scary. What I'm using is Irish Spring. I just grated it, and then I put a little bit of the soap inside of these little meshy bags. You don't want a plastic bag like this one right here, or else the smell of the soap won't be able to come out and scare them away. I guess creepy crawlers do not like strong smelling soap. This is a very good suggestion that I would suggest. I wish I would have known this when I was a beginner. Then I would have alleviated most of the scary little spiders that kept crawling out of my yarn. Another good suggestion I would suggest is do not store your yarn near windows or open doorways where creepy crawlers can come into. If you're going to have them by a window, make sure you have a plastic container like this one, and make sure it has a lid on it so you can close off these little guys from coming in. And you also now have soap, so if they do try to get in or end up coming into your little box, you can scare them off and you don't have to worry about stuff like that. So these are my tips, guidelines, and tricks to helping you as a beginner in crochet. Please leave a like on this video if you liked it. If you have any comments, please leave them down below. And also please subscribe if you want to see more of what I have on my channel. And if you'd like to see this crochet bag tutorial, let me know down in the comments section and I can show you how to make this. This one was actually my first project. It's all in single crochet, as you can see. That way nothing can actually go through the stitches. And then we also have this neat little ridge down here at the bottom so we can fold it. And then I have a flap, and if you'd like to also see a button on here, I can also put buttons on here as well. So if you like this tutorial, thank you, and for our next tutorial we are going to start crocheting. So have a lovely, bye!